Hello and welcome to IMPACTability, the Nonprofit Leaders Podcast. This is a show that explores the landscape of the nonprofit organization, big and small, offers some incredibly helpful information and resources, and gives nonprofits a place to share ideas and get advice. Our show is sponsored by Sukup Strategic Solutions, offering a wide variety of services to help nonprofits maximize their impact. We're excited to bring you the stories and advice of leaders in the nonprofit sector to help you succeed in your nonprofit. So let's get started.
Welcome to IMPACTability, the Nonprofit Leaders Podcast. I'm Cheryl Sukup, and I'm your host for today's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. We have a great episode today with just an amazing nonprofit leader from Pittston, Pennsylvania. His name is Frank Bartoli. Frank, thanks so much for joining me today as a guest on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Frank. Well, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and the mission of the nonprofit organization you currently serve?
Sure. Well, I'm a father of a 27-year-old daughter with Down syndrome, 2 other children. I've been in the nonprofit world since I graduated college. I think what has inspired me to start PA Inclusive is to help my daughter. And I theorized if I could help my daughter, that maybe there are other people like her that would want to be helped in the same type of a way. And at the time, I didn't know if that would really work or not, but it has.
That's great. So tell me about the mission of your organization. You're the CEO of PA Inclusive, right?
Correct. Yes. Our mission is to help create inclusive and sustainable lives for people with disabilities. We work mainly in the intellectual disability sphere, including autism, Down syndrome, and similar type of diverse abilities. Really what we try to do with the mission is what it says. We just try to help people live the most inclusive life that they can in the community based on what their interests and desires are.
That's great. Frank, I had a daughter with cerebral palsy, and having her included in the community it meant everything to me. It was so important to me. So I really appreciate your mission from a personal standpoint too. So thank you for all you do. Really appreciate it. Well, can you tell us how you came to be in the CEO position?
Yeah, so I had been in YMCA work most of my early career. And as my daughter was getting older, I found myself leaving the Y, and I became a chapter executive of a chapter of the ARC. And I learned a lot. It was in the Philadelphia region. And so I learned a lot from very progressive people in that region about inclusion. And I lived down there twice. In fact, my daughter was born down there in Bryn Mawr, and knew a lot of people even from back when she was born that were doing a lot of inclusive type things. And so I knew that this region here really wasn't doing a lot of those types of employment and community living inclusion things. And so I thought, well, if she was still living here and this is where she wanted to remain, and it wasn't really something that was prevalent here, that maybe there was an opportunity to help people like her and her use their ID waiver and OVR funding programs a little bit differently. And so it really was, just an idea that there were a couple contractual agencies that, we could contract with, that she was going to be registering with, that I thought we can use those services a little bit more uniquely to her. And if that was the case, then maybe other people would want us to have a more tailored approach to the services than just kind of a cookie cutter approach to this is how everybody does it. And so that's really kind of how it happened.
That's great. So, just kind of thinking about your line of work with PA Inclusive, just maybe, I think sometimes in the developmental disabilities services world, we tend to talk in alphabet soup. So maybe just go back a little bit and say what the IDD waiver is, and, maybe some of the acronyms. Just say a little bit about what it means to need services to live in the community and how those services get delivered, and like how a nonprofit like yours gets funded to do that. That would help a lot, I think.
Okay, that's a whole podcast of itself, but I'll try to summarize it. If
Thank
you
you.
are a individual, typically a student in school that is identified to have 2 learning delays and an IQ under 70, I believe, you are diagnosed with having an intellectual disability. If you're diagnosed with having an intellectual disability, or autism oftentimes now is put together with that. So if you have autism or an intellectual disability, you receive an IEP, an individualized education program in school. And as you age through school, that educational educational program is supposed to focus on your education. But starting at age 14, the law requires that school districts provide job training services to those same students with IEPs in school. And then those job services are helping students learn how to do jobs in the school, and then as they get a little bit older, in the community settings. So there's some legal matters associated with that. The law states that at age 14, the school is required to provide job training to students with IEPs. The Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, OVR, in Pennsylvania, in different states it's called something else, voc rehab, something of that nature, is a federally funded program that also provides, through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act of, I think, 2014, pre-employment transition services to high school students. And that's nationally delivered to the states. All the states do it a little bit differently. So in Pennsylvania, we can contract with the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation to help a high school student that is required to have job training. We can work directly with the school to do that if they contract with us, or we can work with an Office of Vocational Rehabilitation contract for a student to help do some sort of a job training program. The intellectual disability waiver is also a federally funded, legally mandated program whereby if you have an intellectual disability, 50 years ago, you would have gone and lived in a state-run institutional setting, and then families, quote unquote, waived their right to send their students to an institutional setting and were able to keep their children at home to provide service to them in the community, which is called the community services in the intellectual disability waiver system.
So that's the home and community-based services waiver.
Yes.
Provided through Medicaid.
Correct. So for students that are in high school that receive Office of Vocational Rehabilitation services, as they age out of high school, they can carry that into an adult OVR contract to help find a job and have some job coaching. But they also qualify for that intellectual disability waiver, typically when they age out of high school, either at 18, 19, 20, or 21. That ID waiver typically had been developed around the country as group homes and day programs and what was called sheltered workshops, pre-vocational centers years ago. And as we looked at that model, we thought that there was a different way that we could use those same sets of dollars that are available through the Medicaid programs to the person with an intellectual disability or autism. And instead of having a group program, that we could do individualized, tailored, customizable programs to people, so that we could essentially say, if there's 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 different services that we can offer, we don't have to offer them all to you. We can only offer you the ones that pertain to you, as opposed to saying, well, here's our facility, you have to come here. We could say, we'll just send a person out to meet with you in your home and take you into the community or onto your own job site. And we could use a couple of those services, or one of those services, or 5 of those services, depending on what you need. So we just kind of took the same amount of funded services that are available to anybody that qualifies in the ID waiver or the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation programs. And we simply just came up with a consultative, person-centered approach to how to offer those services to somebody based on what they said they want.
Thanks for explaining that. Really gives us an idea of how your services are structured, and, a little bit of the innovative nature of how you're approaching it. So tell me, this might seem like an obvious answer because you just talked briefly about your daughter, but what inspires you about the work that you do? What makes you want to get up every day and lead this organization?
Yeah, I think number one, when even my own daughter, my own daughter has just continued to, break barriers, as they say. But, her evolution has been one that every now and again, she just does something new and unique and different and more progressive and more inclusionary that just, you know, it inspires me. And, if you get into that kind of routine of I'm kind of bored about what's going on, then all of a sudden she hits another level and you see that. But she's not the only one. We have a lot of people that are the same. So we have a lot of diversity in our company now, where we have a lot of people like Ellie. We have a Matt Crispin that works for us and with autism. And, they just continue to do things that I think people find to be extraordinary. I think they just blow people's minds with the things that they're doing in the community. And, so anytime you start feeling like, oh, I'm kind of getting tired of, I got to raise money or I got to go do this or the state licensing is coming and this and that. When you get into the human side of it, the people that we support are really, truly amazing and really just inspired, not just me, but the team on a regular basis.
Okay, can I just cut in here and say, Matt and Ellie are so inspirational to me. I have Ellie's business card right here in front of
Oh
me.
my God.
And it kind of blew my mind a little bit when she handed me her business card. And she is so professional. She's so outgoing. She has so many, I would say, powerful ideas, and she has the confidence to share them. And I'm sure that has everything to do with her parents, you being her dad, her family, the support that you guys give her, but also PA inclusive in that environment that she's in. She's really empowered. And I can't say enough about Matt. Your executive assistant, is that what his title is? Executive assistant?
Yeah.
He is incredible. You would never know this young man has a disability. He is so professional. I would love 10 Matts. This is like the power of, walking the walk and talking that, not just talking the talk. You're able to show people in the community that, hey, we employ people with disabilities too. And you can also, and look at what they are able to do. You're demonstrating that every day to the community. I think that's extremely powerful.
Yeah. And I think what people don't put two and two together, I think they see it, but they don't realize they see it, is adding Matt into that mix means it's not just Ellie. It's not just the exceptional person that's a once in a generation person in their mind. It's not just like, well, that's just because she's so great, but nobody else is. They see multiple people now. Matt came to us with an OVR contract, and nobody would give him a real job. He was working at a gas station at 4 a.m. and, he just really wanted a real job. And so we gave him a real job because we just thought he could do the job, and we had a job that was available. And he's just done so well in that job that it's just really amazing to see how they've just progressed in their own lives. He's living in his own house now. He's just living a great life. And that's what it's all about.
What is one thing you wish you had known when you began your involvement with nonprofits? Something that you know now that you wish you knew back then when you first started?
We are meeting happy. We are in meetings after meetings after meetings. I have 3 meetings next week at night. I wish I would have really known what I was getting into in terms of time commitment. And the people that I see that are successful in the nonprofit world typically understand that that's part of the deal. That you have to be having a lot of meetings with committees and boards, but you also have to be involved in other things in the community. So you have to be out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a introverted type person, you can be a leader in the nonprofit world, not an accountant or a QA person. I mean, they're great jobs, and some people are really great at them. They're
Yeah.
much better at them than I would be. But if you really want to be in a leadership position, that networking, that being out there, making friends, and it's not always about getting anything at those events. It's just about showing people that you're going to support them as much as they're going to support you. But you have to be out and about, and you have to like that. I tend to like that, so it's fine for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's really helpful. It's a really um, like socially intense job. You're the face of the organization. You're forging relationships all the time. And as you said, sometimes it's not about what you're going to get. Sometimes it's about what you're going to give. And you just have to be out there and making connections and, showing up and helping others as much as it is you finding help for your organization. So it's a big part of the job, and it's really time consuming. So how do you balance it all, Frank?
Well, like I mentioned, I mean, I kind of like doing a lot of that stuff. So
Hmm.
if I go to a networking event, I like it. I like to meet people. I like to talk to people. I like to be friendly with people. If there's a community service project on a Saturday where I have to go in and help, clean up a park, or do something on a Saturday for a couple hours, I mean, to me, it's okay. I like that. I like to feel like I'm giving back. I've got a colleague friend that, he goes and he helps give food out at the soup kitchen once a week. And, it's just in the DNA of the old kind of nonprofit people that you do that type of stuff. But you don't do it because you feel you have to. You do it because you like to do it. And actually,
Yeah.
it also creates a good break in your day. So you're like, well, it's Tuesday. I got to go to the soup kitchen and like hand out soup. Like, you guys handle this stuff here for a while. So, it could also provide you an opportunity for, just some stress relief, and, to kind of revitalize your own mind and things like that. I don't travel as much as I used to, but I do have regional offices that I have to travel to. So also, like, that travel time is a time that you could just think. And I think in
Hmm.
a nonprofit world, if you're a leader, you have to do a lot of thinking and reflecting. At least in my, the way I approach it, I'm always thinking about, well, did I make the right decision on that? Or how can I do that better? Or what are the things that we can do that we're not thinking about? And unless you have any time on your own to do it,
Hmm.
you're just constantly battered down by people coming in your office, and, you never get to think about things. So there's a lot of nuances, I think, to leadership that, um, that you have to get comfortable with and understand.
Well, I like that you find time in your drives to be able to think. A lot of people have a hard time carving that time out. So it sounds like kind of a natural way for you to do it. What do you feel like is the biggest challenge you have with your nonprofit leadership role right now, and how are you going to overcome it?
Um, I mean, there's really two main challenges, I think, if I could talk about two. And one is the
Hmm.
staffing
Sure.
shortages, the
Hmm.
staffing issues, and the culture of the staff. I mean, when I came into the business, I worked 6 days a week for years. I mean, you're not going to get people to do that now. So,
Hmm.
there's a culture of the new staff coming in about quality of life issues. And I mean, you just can't find staff. So there's a huge staffing crunch and a huge staffing issue. But I think volunteers are harder to find now. And nonprofits need volunteers, but they need engaged volunteers. They need productive volunteers. It's harder and harder to get, volunteers to be impassioned about what you're doing and to get them to be active with your organization. It's harder to recruit them. So I think the whole
Hmm.
culture of people, I think they're both kind of the same issue in the sense. I think a
Hmm.
lot of people now significantly value their personal time now.
Hmm.
And I think there's fewer people, in my opinion, that are willing to really be kind of more community minded, Some people like to sit on boards just to be on a board or have a lunch meeting. But if your night meetings, if your weekend events, I think the culture of people is really changing. And I think that's going to be a challenge for the nonprofit world, because in social service agencies and community type organizations, I mean, it's not 9 to 5. I mean, you got people out there, people work. So your board meetings have to be at night, your events. If you're going to run an event, it can't be at Wednesday at noon. I mean, unless it's a bridge club, right? It's got to be on a night or on a weekend. So you've got to invest the time. I think it's harder and harder as time goes on to get people to buy into those types of things. And I think that's going to be a challenge for the nonprofit world.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I feel like I've heard from a lot of different nonprofit leaders that in different kinds of mission areas that they've been challenged with building back their nonprofit. I mean, with their volunteer, they've been challenged with growing back their volunteer base after COVID. So even though we're pretty far out from COVID now, I mean, relatively speaking, people are still challenged with having the number of volunteers that they had from before the pandemic. They just can't seem to get up to that same level. So I don't think it's just your organization. I think that's been a struggle. And recruitment and retention, I agree. I think there's been a pretty big shift. And I don't know how we are going to deal with it, but I think some things that some organizations are doing are just being a little more innovative and flexible with how they approach work. But in your line of work, in your industry, you've got some people that have to work like all different shifts, right?
Right.
So it's may not, and it's a lot of in-person work. So it may not be as simple to,
Right.
apply remote strategies or something like that,
Yeah.
So what are you guys doing?
Well, what are we doing?
Yeah. What are you thinking about
Beggars
doing?
can't
Are
be
there anything?
choosers. We try to be flexible with work environment. And so, as opposed to saying we have a hybrid work environment, what we kind of say is, look, there is a certain amount of flexibility in your schedule, and there is some remote work days that we'll provide. We've increased the number of holidays that we offer, and we don't really require people to be in the office from 8:30 to 5 every single day. Although we say to them, look, it's 8:30 to 5. If you're supposed to be in office, you're supposed to be in office. But if you are working a later shift and you come in later, I mean, we understand that. So, and then we just, basically tell them that, as long as things are getting done properly, we're going to be okay. But when they're not getting done properly, then we're going to have to, say, look, I've gotten an interview recently from, a staff satisfaction type interview, where the person is making some, comments about wanting to have more flexibility to do her own schedule and, and things like that nature. But in her particular job, it's dependent on the client's needs. So there are some things that we can try to work with them, but we only do so much as well, because you're in social services, you have billable time. You've got to be out. And if your staff person isn't available to work with that client for that particular shift, you're going to have to go in. I mean, we're required by the state to provide the level of care that we've agreed to care for. So there's a huge balancing act, but I think you really have to just be much more flexible on, back in the day, if you were like late, you were in the boss's office getting yelled at, right? I mean, you yell at somebody now, they're out. They're working for somebody else 2 days later. So it's a whole different environment of flexibility. You just have to be able to have a system and people that are committed enough to know how to self-manage that environment to get the job done. And when they don't, then you do have to run a business.
All right. Now we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with you shortly.
One of the biggest challenges facing nonprofits today is securing grants. Where do I find information on grants? How do I write a grant? How do I submit the grant? And of course, the dreaded midnight deadlines. At Sukup Strategic Solutions, we have a team of expert grant writers with years of experience writing hundreds of grants for nonprofits just like yours. Visit our website today at sukupstrategicsolutions.com and schedule a free consultation about your grant writing needs. That's SOUKUP strategicsolutions.com. Let's work together and to bring in grant funding to fuel your mission.
Welcome back. I'm speaking with Frank Bartoli of PA Inclusive. Let's continue our conversation, Frank. What's the biggest surprise you've had in the last few months and why?
Yeah, I'll tell you what the biggest surprise I think for me has been in our particular situation is, we have been struggling to develop this coffee shop program where we started a subsidiary coffee shop company to employ people with disabilities and to train people with disabilities. And everything you do when you try to do something new and when you try to be creative, there's a huge risk that you're going to fail. And we had been struggling for a long time to feel like we were being successful financially in that business. And there's some nuances to that and how we enroll people in the training program and the flow of the public to come into the coffee shop. And, over the last couple months, we've just seen people have been coming in droves and signing up for our programs in a way that, we didn't think would be happening. And I think that's kind of a combination. And I had a similar experience in the Y a long time ago. I'm always kind of a believer that, everybody knows what you're doing. So therefore, if they're interested, they're in or they're out. That's kind of, you open your doors. We did a new daycare center at a YMCA once, and it was filled before we even opened the doors. We renovated a fitness center, and no new members came in, and they rolled in over time. Because they had their memberships already secured in the fitness center, and they weren't going to outlie. Childcare is a need-based program. Fitness isn't. So, and I think in our coffee shop environment, I think the word has been getting out, and the more people that come in and see the people with disabilities doing the work, I think that it's been kind of slowly growing, and I think we just kind of went over a threshold. And we have a lot of people signed up for this summer program that the schools are sending, and we weren't sure we were going to have any. So I think I was surprised because the disability world can be very old school in nature, right? There's still a lot of old model programs out there, and when you have contracts existing with old school programs and so on and so forth, when you try to do something new, you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get anybody that's going to switch over to that. But it seems like the schools have jumped on board now with what we're doing, and families are really excited about it. We have a whole group of families from another region that approached us as a group that wants to open up another coffee shop. So that's just been, really exciting and surprising to me, because if you know our organization, we've kind of been working on that for 2 years before it actually, I think, happened. So it was a long time struggling to get to a point where you feel like, wow, people really like this now.
Yeah, that's great. It's really great. I think having visited your coffee shop, the environment in there, the positivity, the place is beautiful too, but the quality of the products that you're selling, it's like, it's not doing anybody a favor going in there. You're getting high quality products and service when you're going in there. So, it's really something special that you've created there. So I'm not surprised that another group of families from another region said, hey, we want this here too. I think you're going to get people wanting that from all over.
Yeah.
So, all right, if there was one piece of advice, Frank, that you could give to other nonprofit CEOs, what would it be?
I think nonprofit CEOs need to be very well versed in organizational design. I think they need to understand how organizations operate. I think they need to understand board work versus staff work, how to build a board, how to manage a board. Really the board manages the executive, but really the executive is managing the process. So, you have to know all those nuances of how that organizational dynamic, that organizational design works. And a lot of people aren't good at it. You have to understand, how to put systems in place. I mean, we had to build this thing from the ground up. I didn't walk into an organization that had been in operation for 50 years and say, well, okay, I'm just going to change the logo on the letterhead now. Like, we had to build the job descriptions. We had to build the processes of onboarding. And as the company evolved, things evolved. Like, we were doing Zoom right before COVID, thank God, because when COVID hit, we were already on Zoom for literally 6 months, and it was like, boom, we didn't miss anything. But if you weren't in on that, you were left in the dark. So I think understanding organizational design and being really good at it is important. Understanding how voting happens. If you're trying to get something passed at your board level, you've got to understand the politics and the processes associated with how to get those things done. You've got to understand how to motivate your staff, and you've got to understand how those things work together in the systems in your organization. If you don't really understand that stuff, being good at business isn't good enough in a nonprofit world, because in a nonprofit world, you're sandwiched in between, volunteers and staff and clients and the community. And you've got to balance all those things. And you've got to be really good at the politics and the organizational design of how those things fit into place and how to keep them going, how to keep them evolving. If you're not good at that, I think you're going to struggle.
It can be a juggling act, right?
Every day.
All right. I'm going to ask you the same question, but with a different twist. If there was one piece of advice you could give to nonprofit board members, what would it be? What do you want board members to know?
I think board members should also self-learn what a board member's role is, how those processes work, how to become good at those processes and procedures, and how to support the executive and the staff in the organization. We get a lot of, it's hard to train people all the time, and people are like, well, you should train your board. I'm like, well, I mean, how much time do we have? There's a lot of people that are well-intentioned that want to do good, but they have no idea how those processes work. And until you really kind of understand your role as a board member and how that role is really kind of done in an organizational way, Robert's rules and committees and, what's operational that I shouldn't get involved in and what's board that I should get involved in. I know one nonprofit that they didn't file their tax return for 5 years, and they got delisted after 501c3, and they're out of business now. Every single year we've been in this business, my board has seen the 990, has reviewed it, has voted to approve it, and it got filed, and they get the notice that it was filed. Those types of things board members don't understand. A lot of people come onto a board and they don't understand their fiduciary responsibility either. But what does that mean, your fiduciary responsibility? Something as simple as seeing the 990. If you're on a board and you're not seeing a 990, you should be asking questions. I was on a board once that didn't have liability insurance, didn't have directors and officers insurance. And I asked questions, and it was a parent organization type thing. And I was trying to do something good. And, so I asked, well, how much are you paying for liability? What's your liability insurance? Well, I don't know. We have a policy. Well, what kind of policy? I don't know. Well, how much are you paying? $100 a year. I'm like, well, you don't have directors and officers insurance then, so I'm not losing my house over this. So I resigned off the board, I think board members, if you want to be involved in a nonprofit organization, you should, same thing. I think
serious business.
Should be learning animals, and they should be self-learning those things, because you want to be able to come to a board meeting and be informed about something. You want to ask that question. Well, when was the last time we had an audit? I was a board chair of another nonprofit that hadn't gotten an audit in like 8 years. And when we asked the executive to get an audit, he refused to get an audit.
Oh,
Yeah,
and what happened?
we fired him.
Oh,
We fired him.
did you end up having the audit?
When the new executive came in, after he was gone, we brought an auditing firm in, and they couldn't give a clean audit for the first year. And I think they couldn't get a clean audit for 3 or 4 years after that. It kept, it was a complicated type organization, but, so, I mean, but a lot of board members wouldn't know that. Like, and what I think a lot of board members don't realize is if you're on a board and you're not getting your liability insurances and you're not getting your tax returns and your audits and something goes wrong, and if you're deemed to be, if you don't have insurance, they're coming after your house. I mean, I think that's probably an extremely rare case, but I think it's very possible.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of
to know your
volunteers,
responsibilities, your duties and responsibilities. Yeah.
yeah, I think board
And how to
members
protect yourself by being informed and doing the things that
Yeah.
you're bound to do as a board member.
Yeah, I think board members need more training and they need more knowledge. And again, you can learn that, easily by just doing your own self-study.
Agreed. Okay. Is there anything, speaking of self-study, is there anything that you've read or listened to recently that has inspired you in relation to your nonprofit work?
I've been doing a lot of reading on fundraising because I kind of feel candidly that I may be a little bit old school in my thought process on fundraising. And, I've really been surprised at beginning to learn and understand, what the new kind of trends are in fundraising and, how to approach, fundraising. I mean, I used to sit in an insurance office and get on the phone with lists of people and call them at home for phone-a-thons and ask them for a pledge and then send them a bill and they get it in the mail. And I mean, that doesn't happen anymore. And then everybody's trying to do, these big fundraisers and you're like, well, why isn't mine as successful? And then you see other people are doing these kind of really fun, exciting kind of things. And so, I've been doing a lot of that type of research because I think funding is extremely important moving into the future. And if you're not in that, you're not going to, if you don't understand it, you're not going to be successful in that area, and that's going to hurt your organization.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting that you've identified that as a type of a topic within your nonprofit work that you really want to know more about, and that you're pursuing your own self-education on that. So that's great. If you want some tips on fundraising books, there's one book that I really, really love, and it's called Asking. It's just a simple, really quick and easy book to read. And it takes a few hours to read. It's very fast, but I think it's a really good one for people who are not accustomed to asking for big gifts. So board members who feel really nervous about asking, it kind of creates this, whole background about what a gift it is to be asked for a gift. So anyway, I'll send you information about that. We'll put it in the show notes too. But there's so many great books about fundraising out there. But, even just going back to the basics, not just the techniques, but the basics of, what generosity is all about, what motivates people to give, and understanding that and those fundamental principles. I don't think what motivates people to give necessarily is, the tax deduction. It helps, but that's not really what it is. That's like driving them to select a specific nonprofit. And I think understanding more about that can help you craft your own fundraising strategy. Plus, it can help you write case statements and come up with proposals and even just language to solicit a gift from somebody, I think. just understanding that, because it's very personal to people. Why they give is very personal, and sometimes they don't even understand it for themselves. So going deep into that, I think that helps. Well, okay. So in your opinion, Frank, what is the most important strength or personality trait someone would need to succeed in the nonprofit sector?
Authenticity.
Authenticity. Okay, yeah. Talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
I think people see me and Ellie and Matt and what we do is very authentic. And I think that's a key to our success. I mean, I think I could run this company without Ellie, but I don't think it would be the same. Conversely, if Ellie and Matt weren't doing such great things in Bryan, Boston, I mean, if they weren't, but people see that interaction. They'll see me walk through the coffee shop and talk to the people that are working in the coffee shop and give them the fist bump, and we'll make sure they're on our committees and they come to our events, and we celebrate them, so I think people get a feel for if you're real or not. Everybody has a good mission. Everybody has a good cause. I mean, there's a lot of great causes out there, and there's a lot of great people out there. But if they don't think you're really authentic, I think they're gonna see through that.
What would be one piece of advice that you'd offer someone who's just starting out in the nonprofit sector today? What do you think that they should know before they get started?
I think what they should know is if you get involved in that organization, people that are clients of that organization are going to become dependent on you in some capacity. And if you fail them, that's going to hurt them. And not that you can stay at an organization forever, because everybody, develops and their lives change and move on. But, what you're doing in the nonprofit world is not business. It is business. It has to be a business. There's revenues, there's expenses, there's audits. I mean, there's all that, but you're impacting people's lives. And when you impact people's lives, they become your friends, and they become friendly to you, and they become, reliant on you. And so if you're going to do those things in nonprofits, either do the things in nonprofits that aren't close to the client base, accounting and quality assurance and things like that. But if you're going to be in that world of, having a close connection to those individuals, just remember that, they're people, and, you have to be able to treat them well. And even if you leave, it's okay. It's how you do it, and it's how you interact with those people. Don't use them. Don't, we've had people that have, oh, I'm going to take, your daughter to dinner. And I'm thinking that's not really an authentic reason that you're doing it. So, you have to be careful in the nonprofit world, I think, and I think you have to learn how to balance not getting too close to those individuals either, because your job is not to be their friends, is not to be their, protectors. I mean, unless you're in a protective type of a role, but you have to know what those boundaries are not to cross either, because those individuals, they're not your friends. You got to be careful how you balance that, and that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of helping professions where that's really a challenge.
To be friendly versus friends, is it's a gray area.
It is. You're absolutely right. It's really a challenge.
You gotta know how to balance that.
Does your organization provide training or some kind of support for the people that work with your organization with indirect services about how to, I don't know, maneuver through that?
Oh yeah.
That challenge of being friendly without being friends.
Oh yeah. We provide a lot of training on that. It's actually required by the state. We end up doing a lot of retraining on that for people that forget how that works. And sometimes, we have to say goodbye to people that, don't understand it at all. So yeah, we do. It's hard, particularly in our organization too, because they see these are individuals that, I mean, you could see them at the movie theater on their own. Matt drives. So, I mean, Matt, so it's a balancing act. But yeah, we do provide training. And if you don't, I think you should. I was in the Y when the Y came out with the child abuse training, and that was, whatever, 95, 98 or something. And that was because they had a problem in Houston, I think, with, a child abuse problem. And so they came out with a training around the country. Boundary training should be pretty important in nonprofit work.
All right. Now, how can people find you online? Where should they go?
Well, I have my own website. It's a very, very intricate website by GoDaddy, frankbartoli.com. It's a very basic website, but at least it gives you some general information. On painclusive.org, you can find me, and also on coffeeinclusive.org, you can find me. So each of those websites should have an email address to email me. I'm on LinkedIn, Frank Bartoli, founder of PA Inclusive. I'm on Facebook. So, I mean, I'm in this world, I was trying to do, an application for child abuse clearances because you have to do them every so many years. And I was doing it the other day and I couldn't remember some of my addresses. And I was Googling, my name in the town and they were all popping up. And I'm like, if somebody wants to find me, they're going to be able to find me. Let's put it that way.
Well, Frank, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for all your great ideas, your wisdom that you shared, your great advice, and for sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I feel like I have more to say, but maybe the second episode.
All right. That sounds really good. And I also just want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for all that you do, for all of the people in your community. And you're really changing the world in a great way. The things that you're doing may inspire others across the country to do similar things. And I think what you're doing is great. And I'm really, really hopeful that more people will learn about your organization and the innovative things that you're doing by listening to Impactability.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So thank you. You're so welcome. Thanks for being our guest.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We love to hear from our listeners, so please reach out and let us know what you liked and what else you'd like to hear. You can find our email address and links to our social accounts in the show notes. If you enjoyed hearing from today's guest, we encourage you to reach out and connect with them. See the show notes for their contact information. To get more great content in your inbox each month, sign up for our newsletter at impactability.live. That's impactability.live. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app. That way you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. Finally, we'd be grateful if you would give us a positive review or a rating so that your peers in the nonprofit industry can find us as well. From all of us at Impactability, thanks for listening and thank you for all you do to make the world a better place through your nonprofit.